I confronted my son and cut ties with him after his girlfriend showed up at my door in tears, revealing he had been physically abusing her. I've posted this before, but I'm still trying to make sense of everything, and maybe hear some judgment too. I'm a 49-year-old single father of 3. My wife died of cancer when our eldest was only 13. It was a brutal chapter, and raising 3 kids while working 12 to 16-hour shifts nearly broke me. I wasn't around much, but I was proud, and deeply grateful, that my children grew up strong and independent despite the hardship. Let me give you a bit of background about myself. I grew up in a violent home. My father was a brutal man. He beat my mother, and when he wasn't hurting her, he was taking it out on us kids. I was the oldest of 5, with 3 younger sisters. I did everything I could to shield them, often stepping in to take the beatings myself. As I got older and stronger, I began fighting back. I stood up to my father every time he raised a hand. Eventually, he landed in prison for assault, and we left the state for good. Fast forward to today, my kids are now 24, son, 21, and 17, both daughters. The girls still live with me while attending college. My son moved out and has been living on his own. A few years ago, he started dating a young woman, sweet, soft-spoken, and gentle. She reminded me so much of my late wife that I welcomed her into our lives with open arms. Over the past 3 years, she became like one of us, often visiting to help my daughters with school or just to hang out. I came to love her as if she were part of the family, and I told her that many times. Then, 4 weeks ago, everything changed. She showed up alone at my house. And the moment I opened the door, my heart stopped. Her face was bruised, a swollen lip, a black eye, and blood in the white of her eye. I didn't hesitate. I pulled her inside, called my daughters over, and we took care of her. When we asked what happened, she quietly said the words that shattered me. "It was your son." I broke down. I held her and sobbed, apologizing over and over. She told us everything. This wasn't the first time. She hadn't told her parents, or the police. She came to us because she felt safe here. I told her she was staying with us now, no questions. My daughters made up a room for her. That night I couldn't sleep. I just sat there, staring at the dark screen of the TV, seeing my own haunted reflection. A few days later, I asked her if it would be okay for me to invite my son over. She agreed. When he showed up, I told my daughters to keep her in their rooms and act like she wasn't there. As soon as I opened the door and saw him, my stomach turned. My blood was boiling, but I forced myself to stay calm. We sat at the table and started dinner. I couldn't stop looking at his hands, bruises and scrapes on his knuckles. My mind wouldn't stop flashing back to my father. It was like staring into the past, and it made me sick. I kept the conversation casual, pretending like it was just a normal dinner. But the whole time, I didn't see my son. I saw a man I promised I'd never become. Then I asked him about his girlfriend, how things were going. He choked on his food for a second, and with a nervous smile, said everything was fine. He shrugged and said she was just busy with work, that they hadn't seen much of each other lately. I nodded like I believed it. "That's good," I said. "Glad she's doing all right." We finished dinner, and I took to cleaning up. As I stood beside him at the sink, scrubbing plates, I asked, calmly, but firmly, why he had been hitting his girlfriend. I told him to cut the lies. I said, "Enough. Stop pretending everything's fine." He gave me a puzzled look and asked what I meant. That's when I told him to stand up. Raise his fists. I let him know I already knew everything, and that now, it was time for him to understand what it feels like to be powerless. Before he could get another word out, I threw the first punch. I didn't hold back. This wasn't a warning, this was a reckoning. I told him to fight back, to defend himself. If he thought it was okay to raise a hand to someone so much smaller, so much softer, then he should know exactly what that feels like. We fought. Or rather, I fought. And I didn't stop until he hit the ground. I stood over him, breathing hard, and asked, "How does it feel? To be the one on the floor? To be the one who can't stop it?" He pleaded with me to stop. But I looked him in the eye and asked, "Did you stop when she begged?" I kept going, until she came running downstairs, screaming for me to stop. The moment he saw her, pale and trembling, he froze. The horror on his face said everything. I looked at him and said he should be thankful she didn't go to her father, because her father might have made him dig his own grave. He was lucky the police hadn't been called, because prison is not kind to men who lay hands on women. And he was lucky that it was me confronting him, not someone who would have finished the job. I told him that I was ashamed to share blood with him. That from this moment on, he was no longer a part of our family. I told him to get the hell out of my house. He was a disgrace, a failure, a stranger. Watching him leave reminded me of how she'd arrived, broken and silent. I threw him a roll of napkins, told him to clean himself up on his way back to whatever hole he crawled out of. And when the door shut behind him, I wept. I turned to her and told her the choice was hers. Whether she stayed with us or not, she'd always have a place here. But if she chose to go back to him, I'd be checking in on her regularly. I told her how sorry I was. How this was my failure, too, that I hadn't raised him better. It's been a few weeks since that night. I didn't even realize I'd broken my nose until the next day. Doesn't matter. She chose to leave him, and she's still here with us. But I feel hollow. I keep seeing the bloodstains on the carpet, on the couch. I can't stop wondering if I did the right thing. If there was another way. I've lost my son, and no matter how justified I felt, that still hurts like hell. Sometimes I just sit there, staring at the blank television, caught in the silence of my thoughts. Hey again, Reddit. There were a lot of comments, and many of you had questions. One that really stuck with me, and even made my daughters laugh, was, "What would you have done if your son had won?" They told me to quote the great Kanye. I guess we'll never know. So, here's the latest. Quite a few people encouraged me to reach out to my son, and yesterday, I did. We agreed to meet. I let my daughters and his ex know I'd be going to his apartment. I even asked if she wanted me to pick up anything she'd left there. I showed up at his place at 8 a.m., just wanting to get it over with. He greeted me with a handshake. He shook my hand, but couldn't meet my eyes. His injuries had mostly healed, and physically he seemed all right. He led me into his apartment. The place was a mess. Trash bags were stacked in corners, and the walls had dents, little reminders of anger that had nowhere to go. I noticed that because, a while back, I'd seen marks on his hands. Now I understood where they came from. We made some small talk, surface-level stuff, but I eventually brought up therapy. He shut the idea down immediately. I told him we had to talk about his ex and, more importantly, about his actions. He sighed and said, "So I'm guessing she told you everything, huh?" I said yes. Then I asked him to tell me everything, his version, no lies. He admitted to it. Said he lost his job 8 months ago when a mass layoff hit his company, and ever since, he hadn't been able to land another one. His girlfriend picked up the slack, covering bills, trying to keep them both afloat. That made him feel small, like a failure. When she offered help or asked about his job search, he'd snap at her. That's when it began, the resentment, the lashing out. Eventually, hitting her became his go-to whenever he felt humiliated, insecure, or weak. I asked questions, broad and specific, and everything he said lined up with what his ex had told us. She hadn't lied. I told him I regretted not letting him explain earlier, but in the end, it was probably better I didn't. Knowing the shallow reasons behind what he did, it wouldn't have helped. He didn't apologize. Not once. No guilt. No shame. He just kept trying to justify what he'd done. Things got heated. I told him, loud and clear, that nothing, not poverty, not frustration, not failure, gave him the right to put his hands on her. Struggle doesn't excuse cruelty. He stood up, angry now, and asked why I couldn't just take his side. I stood too. What side am I supposed to take? I asked. The side of the man who beat his girlfriend because he didn't like how life turned out. Every time I tried to steer him toward growth, he got defensive. Bitter. Hostile. I told him flat out, if he didn't get his life together, if he didn't seek help and start working on himself, then he was not welcome near his sisters or inside my home. Period. He accused me of only caring about his ex. I told him to cut the victim act. He wasn't the one who needed protection. He made his choices, and now he had to face the consequences. He wasn't a child anymore. He was a grown man, and that meant being accountable. I asked him to return his ex's things. He said he'd already destroyed them, and he led me to a pile of broken pieces, shattered fragments of her belongings, and maybe, of who he used to be. I told him again, I was ashamed. Ashamed that this was the man he'd become. I begged him to get help, to pull himself out of this spiral, or one day he'd end up dead or behind bars. He told me to go myself. So I did. I picked up what was left of her things, stuffed the pieces into a bag, and walked out. Update 2. Since then, my son's been blowing up my phone with angry messages. My daughters told me he's been pestering them, too, asking where his ex is, saying he wants to see her. But we all know better. This past weekend, I hosted a cookout. Just family. My siblings came by, but my son wasn't invited. I told them everything. And sadly, they agreed. He turned out more like our father than any of us ever thought possible. We even joked that out of all of us, one was bound to inherit our dad's worst traits. I guess that prophecy landed on him. My brother and I ended up sharing stories from our childhood, the ugly stuff, the stuff we usually bury. My daughters and my son's ex listened quietly. They asked questions. We answered. My mom. She spent most of the time with my daughters and my son's ex, doting on them, keeping them close. My mom spent the rest of the cookout talking about how dangerous men could be, constantly bringing up stories from the past. I found it ironic, but it's my mom, I couldn't really say anything. Even at 49, I still couldn't stop her from telling my daughters about all the trouble my brother and I used to cause. It's like those stories never leave her. A few hours into the cookout, the women were in the living room, doing their thing, while the guys were outside in the garage, working on one of the cars. Then we heard loud banging on the door. My sisters were yelling at us to get inside. When we got to the door, we found out it was my son. He was drunk, yelling his ex's name, demanding she open the door, calling her awful names. I told the women to get away from the door, and I opened it. He tried to push his way inside, so I shoved him back and told him to get away and stop acting like an idiot. I warned him that if he didn't leave, I'd call the cops. He told me to shut up and kept yelling at me to let him see her. I stood my ground. No way was I letting him near the house, not after everything that had happened. I even offered to call him an Uber, hoping he'd just go home and sober up. Then my brother-in-law came out to see what was going on, and my son, in his rage, threw a beer bottle at him. The bottle missed but hit the window. He got even more aggressive, approaching me now, shouting for me to let him talk to her. His tantrum lasted for a good 10 minutes before his ex peeked out the window. That's when he screamed out, "I knew you were in there!" and threw another beer bottle. This one hit the window and shattered, and the glass almost hit her face. That's when my brother came outside, and the two of us stood in front of him. We told him to leave, or we'd call the police, or worse, knock him out if he kept threatening us. Long story short, he lunged at us, and it turned into a full-blown mess. My brother held him in a chokehold until he passed out. My mom, meanwhile, was on the phone with 911. The police arrived about 20 minutes later, and we all sat on my son until they got there. We explained everything, and I showed them the Ring camera footage as further evidence. My son was arrested, put in cuffs, and taken away. Thanks to everyone who suggested getting cameras. They really proved helpful in this situation. His ex is fine, and so is everyone else, except for my mom, who was still shaken up, as were the women, but not as badly. We cleaned up the mess and tried to move past the awkwardness, but things felt tense. My mom was upset that I let my son throw the second bottle, but I wasn't about to let him get away with that. Later, my brother and I talked outside about what had just happened. He asked me if I'd considered letting my son see his ex, maybe let him say his piece, even if he was still in the wrong. It was a dumb question, and we both knew that. But it got me thinking, what if he really wanted to apologize? What if he was genuinely there to try to make things right, and I just made it worse by escalating everything? I haven't seen or visited my son since the incident, even though it's been 2 days now since he was taken away. I'm still not sure what to think. Cop Car AA Update 3. Hello again, everyone. As you all know, my son was arrested for the scene he caused a few days ago. My mother has stayed with me and my family while everyone else returned to their homes. I've fixed both windows that my son broke and also repaired the door, which was damaged due to the hinges he messed with. It's been a rough few days, and I've been struggling with it all. My daughters have visited their brother in jail on my behalf, and they've told me he looks like a complete mess. His ex has expressed wanting to see how he's doing, and I agreed to let her. Yesterday, we went to visit him, and he indeed looked terrible. I let her speak with him first for a few minutes while I talked to the officers handling his case. He's facing charges for trespassing, public intoxication, disorderly conduct, battery, property damage, possession of illegal narcotics, and more. Hearing all that was incredibly tough. It hit me hard to know my son would be locked up for a while. While I waited for the ex to finish speaking with him, I kept thinking about what I would say to him, or if I should even show up. Should I even be there? I was torn. When she came out, she looked devastated, and I didn't ask what they talked about. I went in to see him. The moment he saw me, he looked furious. I sat down and tried to ask how he was doing, but the conversation went nowhere. I told him I never wanted to see him locked up and that this whole situation hurt me. He just asked me if I was going to get him out because it was bullshit, and he didn't deserve to be in there. I tried to stay patient, but his words were arrogant, ignorant, and hurtful. I told him I was there to see him one last time, but I wasn't going to help him get out. That set him off, and he started cussing at me. I reminded him that his actions had consequences and that he chose this life. He started blaming me for his arrest, and that's when I snapped. I told him he couldn't keep blaming others for his choices, that he was just being pathetic, and that he needed to stop being a piece of sh*t. The room went quiet after that, and he apologized to me, saying he was sorry for what he did. I told him it was too late for apologies. He started to tear up, but I told him to stop playing the victim. He got angry again and told me the same thing he always did, that I never chose his side and that it was my fault. I responded by telling him that his grandfather was the same way, always blaming others for his problems and taking his anger out on the people who cared about him. I said the same thing to him that I said to my father when he got locked up, that he was a filthy animal who deserved to be behind bars. I told him that the family would move on without him, that we would forget about him and be happy. His sisters would have their own families, his ex would move on, and the world would keep spinning while he stayed locked up. He just sat there, tears running down his face. I felt terrible seeing him like that, but I couldn't help him anymore. The last thing I said to him was that he was officially disowned. I told him I would be getting a restraining order, and that he was no longer my son. I told him to forget about me and about his family. AITA Update 4. Hello everyone. First, I want to apologize for not responding to everyone's comments and DMs. I've been pretty busy with life, and a lot has happened. Thank you to everyone who has shown support and left kind messages. I'll start by saying that my daughters are doing well. They were a bit sad after the court hearing, but they're handling it as best as they can. I spoke with the ex's family about what happened, and we've made peace. I think they like me. The handshake from her father was pretty firm, so I'll take that as a good sign. The ex's injuries have healed up nicely, and so have mine. My nose no longer looks funny either. She's decided to stay with me a bit longer, and I'm happy to have her under my wing for now. As for my mother, she's been a thorn in my side ever since the incident, which is fine, I guess. I'll probably post another AIDA asking for advice on how to handle her. Lately, I've been feeling down and lazy. I just wanted to get out, enjoy the world, and see something nice. You know, smell the roses and all that. My son's hearing was a couple of weeks ago, and everyone attended, including me. Despite everything I've said or done, I knew I had to be there. It was one of the saddest experiences of my life. As much as I hate what my son became, I still love him. Hearing him get sentenced to 12 years for drug possession, assault, and a laundry list of other charges was incredibly hard. I needed some time to process it all. I took a break and went on a camping trip with my daughters. It was fun, well, except for almost being mauled by a bear, but that's part of the adventure. According to my daughters, I'm now hood certified, after the food I cooked on the grill. Honestly, I don't even know what that means, but it sounds like they liked it. Now that some time has passed and I've had a chance to clear my head, I realize I have a lot of regrets about how I handled everything. I did so many things wrong and said things no father should ever say to his son. I make no excuses for my actions. I messed up, and I will live with the consequences of my choices. I hope and pray that in the future, I'll be a better man, and I hope my son can find his way too. I want to forgive him. I want him to forgive me. I want his sisters to forgive him. I just want my family back together. But like everything else, life is unpredictable, and I'm staying optimistic. Many people reached out to me privately, and I've read all of their messages. For those I haven't replied to, I apologize. I've been shy in responding, but I truly appreciate the support. My daughters have been talking about me dating again, and I thought it was sweet. But the truth is, I've already had and loved a woman, and no one can replace her. I miss her, and I know she probably would have smacked me and told me off for all the mistakes I've made. Man, I really miss you, Ellie. Life has been tough without you, but I've managed to raise a strong family. You would be so proud of our lovely daughters. They're doing well and making their own paths in life. I just wish you were here to see it. You are interested in this story, then this video format suits you. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, there you will find even more interesting stories.